Hi, I'm Lindsey.
And I'm Connor.
And I promise this is interesting.
Lindsey, let me tell you about something that I think is pretty interesting.
Do your best.
Okay. What do you know about the town of Aberdeen in Scotland?
Not a thing.
Not a thing.
I'm imagining the word in my head, and I'm probably spelling it wrong in 12 different ways.
Fair enough. So Aberdeen, Scotland is on the eastern coast of Scotland.
Make up your mind.
It's on the eastern coast of Scotland.
Okay.
It's a small city. It's really old. That's the thing about European cities that I think a lot of Americans don't understand is like that city was founded in like the 1200s or something.
People have been living in Europe since we traveled out of Africa.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And Britannia is like a really interesting spot for humanity too, right? Because it's like, even when the Romans couldn't conquer it for a long time. Right?
Why not?
Well, just because of all the Gauls and the barbarians that lived up there. And they would chop off people's heads and
wonderful.
Whatever. But anyway, Aberdeen is of interest to me and my family because based on what I've been told, Aberdeen is like where my family kind of comes from.
Are you part of the beheading?
No, I don't think so.
Do you come from a long line of beheaders?
I don't think I've beheaded anybody. I don't think my family's beheaded anybody.
Oh,
but
I don't know. I bet your dad could do it.
I mean, they're farmers. Who
for
knows?
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, that's exciting. Okay, I'm excited. I love where this is going.
I know. So it's a city that's situated on the eastern coast of Scotland.
Okay.
And it sits at the kind of the intersection of two rivers, the two major rivers in that area. And the word Aberdeen actually means the mouth of the River Don.
Okay, so one of the rivers is named Don.
Correct, yes.
Okay, what's the other one? Dusk. The Celts love their poetry.
Yeah. Anyway, I think Aberdeen's really interesting because it's got, like all of the cities up there, it's got history during the kind of the War of Independence from Britain, right? Robert the Bruce kind of won a big battle up there. It was the Battle of Aberdeen in like 1309.
God, that just rolls right off the tongue. The Battle of Aberdeen.
The Battle of Aberdeen, I know.
Oh.
And because the English, from what I understand, were using Aberdeen as kind of a base of operations. And so Robert the Bruce came in, kicked him out, and then was like, yeah, that's where we get the kind of the Highlander, right? It's like,
so wait, did you
Highlander,
say...
but the, who's the guy?
Outlander?
Not Outlander. They may take our lives, but they may never take our freedom.
Oh, William Wallace.
William Wallace,
yeah.
yes.
That movie is so historically inaccurate.
Oh, it's awful.
I watched it and I'm like, I wish this is how it went.
Right,
this is really interesting.
Exactly, yeah.
I'm sure this is a little bit more interesting than what actually happened, which was like probably a lot of paperwork. It's William Wallace writing letters being like, please stop the murdering of our people. It's the king saying no.
Right, exactly.
Wait, I wanted to ask, you said Aberdeen could not be conquered by the Romans?
Well, not even Aberdeen, but like Scotland, Ireland, Wales generally. The Romans, that was back when the Gauls lived in that area. That was like the Gallic Empire.
Right. Okay. Right? So then how did the English get in?
The Romans basically conquered Gaul and kind of set up shop and slowly started to work with the Gallic people to move into that area. And that just kind of slowly happened over time. Hey guys, Editing Connor here. Just wanted to jump in really quick because I'm getting a lot of information wrong in this little clip that you're about to watch. Obviously, the Romans and the Celts didn't get along great if you know anything about this period of time. And if you're interested in learning more about this period of time, I would recommend a great podcast by Dan Carlin called The Celtic Holocaust. Kind of lends a little bit more idea about what was going on around here. I'm also going to say some more incorrect things coming up, but I just wanted to say we're going to get some stuff wrong. But, we'll always try and correct it when we catch it. Just wanted to jump in and say that really quick. Okay, bye.
Oh, are you telling me that they bamboozled the people there to be like, well, come on, we have furs and we have guns.
I mean, so,
we're just a couple of friendly guys. We're just a couple of wild and crazy guys.
Yeah, I think that's basically how it went.
And then it was the British Empire.
Yeah, basically for hundreds of years, they fought against each other and they could never win because the Romans were actually soft boys when compared to like the proto-Viking Celts that lived up there.
Yeah.
Like they would tattoo their bodies in blue ink and would cut people's heads off. Like there's reports of like people would keep the heads of their father in their house as like the spiritual ancestors.
The Vikings would.
The Gauls. No, the Gauls would do that.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
I'm so into this.
Yeah. And now they're the Welsh.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that feels good. I'm shocked that any Englishman walked into that and was like, I think we could take over.
We could definitely run this. Yeah.
I think we could get the power here with our little gap teeth.
So yeah, Robert the Bruce was kind of the guy. I don't know how much about Scottish history you know,
Very little.
but he was
embarrassing.
he was like declared the king of Scots back in his day
Okay.
in like the 13th, 14th century. I don't know exactly which one. And yeah, the Battle of Aberdeen was one that he won, where he kicked out the English and kind of took back Aberdeen for the people. And again, it's one of these cities that's like ancient, right? Like the University of Aberdeen was established in the 1400s.
Sweet Jesus.
And
When
it's-
like monks were studying
Right,
by
exactly.
candlelight.
Yeah, and now it's, liberal arts majors with blue hair. Like
Right.
it's
Like, actually, I don't think Stowe, Vermont is a place geographically. It's a state of mind.
So yeah, in 1308, the Battle of Aberdeen happened, and Robert the Bruce was fighting to unify his power in Scotland and to kick out England.
Was Scotland broken up into clans at this point?
Yeah,
We are so embarrassing ourselves on that.
No, no,
I know
no,
so little.
The Scottish clans have always been a thing.
Right.
And so originally, basically, the clans were kind of like their own country, right? And that's why Robert the Bruce was really interesting, because he was kind of declared the king of Scots.
He was unifying.
He was unifying all the clans.
Oh, very
and that's why
interesting.
England wanted him dead.
Right.
Because they knew if they got all these the kilt-wearing, head-chopping
Yes.
Scotsmen unified, that they would lose and get absolutely rocked.
Right.
Anyway, my rabbit hole today does not have to deal with the
With any of
history
this.
with the history of Scotland, but I did
Okay.
want to start with Aberdeen because I think it's a very interesting city. And like I said, it's at the intersection of these two rivers, and it's kind of an ancient city. And it also has a very unique property. Can you guess what that property is? Like a certain aspect about Aberdeen as it
Okay.
relates to the world around it.
Okay, can I get 3 guesses?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay, it is situated on an enormous naturally occurring diamond mine.
Okay, no.
Okay. It is built on the bones of the ancient people that lived there.
Okay, that's probably true, but not what I'm
That's
going
kind
for.
of a cop out. Really,
Yeah.
every land is built on bones. Okay, third. What was the question again?
What
What's
is a unique property or aspect about Aberdeen that I'm going to talk about, do you think?
It exists entirely in between the two rivers.
Okay, again, I don't totally know, but that's not where I'm going with it. Here's what I think is unique about
I've
Aberdeen.
only stuck to geography. Stupid.
So Aberdeen has a twin, Aberdeen, Washington, in the United States.
Really?
Right.
What does that mean?
There's a city called Aberdeen in Washington.
We do that all the time.
We
have
do.
New York.
Exactly.
Where's the York?
That's exactly where I'm going. So Aberdeen is like a bunch of other cities that have twin cities somewhere else in the world.
Mhm. Jersey.
So we have Aberdeen, Scotland. We have Aberdeen, Washington, right? We have Paris, France.
Yes.
we have
Paris, Texas.
Paris, Texas.
Which one's better? It's really, we'll never know.
We have Cairo, Egypt, and Cairo,
West Virginia.
Illinois.
Even worse.
Um,
Actually, no, I'm going to correct. West Virginia is a beautiful state. My
West
friend
Virginia's
Lauren Peace
gorgeous.
has
That's where
totally
my
changed
family
mind
also
on that.
comes from, is West Virginia.
Absolutely beautiful.
It's gorgeous. We have Sydney, Australia, and Sydney,
Vancouver.
Nova Scotia. Close. Close. And yeah, it's like throughout history, you're right. Like humans have always kind of named a place they were living that was kind of like the place they used to live, right? That's where we get New York, New Jersey, New England,
Virginia,
the New England area.
named for the Virgin Queen. I mean,
Really? Is that really what it's named after?
we decide to live on a river, and then we just name it after the last place we were.
Right.
That's what we do. So like the United States, Mississippi is not an English word. That's a native word.
Of course. Yeah. Naturally.
Or it's like really like an anglicized version of a couple of native words.
Right. We get that a lot in the United States, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a unique aspect of America specifically, because you don't really have a lot of native populations that people have run into in other countries like Europe, right? Or if they did, they ran into them in the year 6, right?
Well, this is also like another gap in my knowledge of world history, but Europe again is so old that are there stories of Europeans moving from, or proto-Europeans moving from Africa into the continent of Eurasia
That's a great question.
and
I don't know.
booting out the people that were already living there? Or
Right.
were there no people there? Was it just trees and grass? And they were
Right.
like, we'll live here now.
Right. And it was at that time where it was like everybody was so isolated that you theoretically could have done that and then run into
Right.
other people, and they might have done the same thing, or they have been living there for generations already.
Yeah, because people didn't just go to Europe, they also went into Asia
Mhm.
and they also went into North America. And then as everything split apart, that's how you ended up with
Right.
colonialization.
So anyway, yeah, we're showing our ignorance in terms of human history, but I do find history fascinating. So Aberdeen, Washington is going to be our focus a little bit today.
Okay. Ooh,
It sets the
okay.
stage for some interesting things that I want to talk about.
Big fan of Washington State in this house.
Washington State is beautiful.
Yeah.
The PNW, as we call it in the States.
The what?
The PNW, the Pacific Northwest.
No one calls it that.
A lot of people call it the PNW.
The Canadians call it that?
Well,
They don't count.
no, it wouldn't be. No, it's not the Pacific Northwest of Canadians because it's south of them.
Right, but they would call it the Pacific Northwest because American lingo takes over the world.
Yeah, I know. We do tend to dominate some things. So Aberdeen, Washington was established in 1859. It was originally just a homestead of a dude. Like a dude moved out here and was like, this is where I'm living.
Oh, yeah. I want to meet that guy.
Yeah, he was kind of like an early settler, right? And they believe the name is derived from Scotland, from the city in Scotland.
He's
Because
probably a Scottish immigrant.
maybe, yeah. And Aberdeen, Washington is also settled at the mouth of two distinct rivers.
Mm.
So it kind
go.
of shares a couple of aspects with Aberdeen, Scotland, right? What else do you know about Aberdeen, Washington?
I'm going to say it has the lowest rate of murder per capita in the United States.
That's hilarious because at the time, it actually had the highest murder rate per capita in the United States in the late 1800s, early 1900s.
My intuition is never entirely wrong. It's just like entirely wrong.
So at one point, it garnered a reputation as the hellhole of the Pacific.
Oh, sweet Jesus.
Or the port of missing men because of how high of a murder rate it had.
Okay, I've been imagining
yeah, Twilight, yeah.
like Robert Pattinson standing on a cliff in the rain. It's beautiful. This
Right.
in my head, it's beautiful forest land. Is it not like that?
No, it's definitely like that. But
also people go missing.
yeah, but again, this is back during the settling of the West, right? So you gotta
1959, not our country's greatest year.
not even
I would say.
1859.
Isn't that what I said?
You said 1959.
Okay, either way, terrible year.
Right. But gambling halls, brothels, port. It was a port city.
Right.
And port cities always kind of have a reputation of being rough and tumble because they're bringing in sailors, right?
Mm.
And they have a kind of an economy that's based around people who don't live there.
Sailors are just pirates who are doing things by the book.
Exactly. That's another rabbit hole we're going to go down at some point. So another fact that I'm kind of hinting at here is Aberdeen, Washington. The motto on the welcome sign is "Come as you are." Do you know why that is?
No.
Because Nirvana, the band Nirvana, is from Aberdeen, Washington.
That matches beautifully.
Doesn't it?
Of course Kurt Cobain grew up in the port of missing men. Where do we think he grew up? In like America's sweetheart town district?
It is important to say that Aberdeen, Washington now is a very nice town.
Very suburban.
It's very suburban. It's a nice little town in Washington. And yes, Kurt Cobain grew up in Aberdeen, Washington. And Nirvana is kind of the most famous band that came out of Aberdeen, Washington.
Wow.
Right? Everything that you know about Nirvana, it kind of centers around Kurt Cobain, right? The kind of the front man who had a very tragic end. Ultimately, he was the godfather of grunge in the 90s, and
yes,
and lived a very hard life. Unfortunately,
Kurt Cobain. I watched a documentary on Kurt Cobain when I was maybe 7 or 8 years old.
Mm-hmm.
My mom loves documentaries. She loves music. My sisters were teenagers in the 90s, so they were growing up in the grunge era. And like my sister Lauren especially was like really into rock and roll. I don't think Nirvana was her band or anything.
No, but she probably had a magazine of Kurt Cobain on the
for
front
sure.
of it.
Like she probably knew every song.
Right.
So like Kurt Cobain was, very present in the eyeliner community. So like I watched this documentary and it is very dark and heavy, and
it is.
But also I remember it being fascinated even at 7 years old, which is really saying something because most documentaries are like watching toast become toast.
Very true. Which is a funny thing to say considering you and I are talking about making a documentary.
But our documentary is going to be really good.
It is. So yeah, Kurt Cobain is definitely like the most famous member of Nirvana.
Yes.
But Nirvana has a couple of interesting members, like Dave Grohl.
Yes.
Dave Grohl used to be the drummer for Nirvana.
And now he's in the Foo Fighters.
And now he's the front man and leader of the Foo Fighters, right?
Sounds like a nice guy.
He does seem like a nice guy. I know he's been kind of getting in hot water recently.
Really?
But,
what'd he do?
well, we've been talking about it. He like had an ultra an out of marriage affair, had a
That kind
child.
of hot water. Honestly, what a relief that that's the hot water. Like all you did was
Right.
cheat on your wife. Thank God. Like
That's what people expect rock stars to do.
right.
Right.
You weren't at Epstein's Island.
Right. It was kind of like when Arnold Schwarzenegger, it came out that he had cheated on his wife. It's like, yeah, of course he did.
Well, yeah, you were the governor.
Right. Exactly.
Like, if you really kind of sold yourself out there.
So yeah, Kurt Cobain and Dave Grohl, two very famous members of the band. But I want to focus on one member of the band that I think should interest you a lot. And his name is Jason Everman. Are you familiar with Jason Everman?
I've never heard of this man in my life.
So Jason Everman was the second guitarist for Nirvana.
What a big old shoe.
Yeah, right.
Whoa.
And I'll show you a picture of Jason Everman at some point.
Would I like him?
He's got incredibly curly long hair. He looks like a rock star grunge guy, right? I'll go back into his backstory. So Jason was a guy who was born actually in a place called Uzinki, Alaska. Uzinki, Alaska, which is a town on Spruce Island, which is a part of the Kodiak Islands off the southern coast of Alaska.
Wow.
Yeah. And currently, as of the 2020 census, has a population of 109 people.
Oh my God.
Imagine being born there.
Can you imagine how beautiful it is? How quiet it is? You go outside, you can't even hear the breath of someone's thought.
No.
Like everything is so silent. It's
Right.
so quiet there.
Exactly. Exactly.
Oh, I want to go there.
So his parents kind of moved there allegedly to save their marriage. The marriage obviously didn't get saved, and then
I feel like moving to a glacier has saved no
zero
one
marriages.
ever. Yeah.
I know it really all it does is you just can't go anywhere.
I would say it complicates things.
Probably.
You're forced to cuddle, and if you don't like each other.
Allegedly, they also had a pet ocelot that lived with them named Kia.
What's an ocelot?
An ocelot is a wild cat. It's an Arctic wild cat.
Who's this man?
I know. So there's a lot of struggle in the house. Obviously, I think it seemed like there was a bit of a tumultuous family dynamic, and it led Jason to going to therapy. He was kind of a ne'er-do-well in his younger age. And
how he's like in high school? At this
yeah, I
point?
think he's a teenager. And I think he like the event that I kept reading about was that he blew up a toilet with an M80 when he was at school, and so his family was like. His grandma basically said, Jason, you can't be doing that.
I so would have had a crush on this kid in high school.
And so he started going to therapy. And his therapist was like a big music head and had a bunch of guitars in the office. And that's kind of where he started learning how to play guitar, was in therapy.
You're fucking joking.
No, and his family kind of jokes about it. It's like it's the most expensive guitar lessons that I think have ever existed. After therapy, after taking up music, he was really into music. And he started working with his father up in Alaska on a fishing boat. Kind of in the summers and stuff, and some of the winters. And he gained a reputation for making money, being self-sufficient, right? And then he was like kind of entering the grunge scene of Aberdeen, right?
Which must have been like 4 people at this point, right?
Right, exactly. And that's what he knew some of the members of Nirvana, so he knew some of the friends that knew people in the band of Nirvana. And it was funny because, the grunge scene, these guys are like 19, 20 years old. They don't have any money. So at this time, Nirvana had recorded the album Bleach, which I think is either their first or second album.
What a terrible word, by the way.
Yeah. And they actually owed money to the producer and couldn't get the album because they owed him money. And so they asked Jason to help. And Jason's like, oh yeah, I can do it. Because he was the only one that had a job.
He was the producer.
Well, no, he wasn't a producer. He basically loaned them the money to get the album finished.
Oh, wait. This was before he was in the band.
Correct.
Okay,
yes.
I'm 20 years behind.
No, you're fine. So yeah, Jason loaned Nirvana $606.17 in order to finish the recording of Bleach. And they let him into the band, and he went on tour with them. But the tour went sour real quick.
What happened?
They were all friendly with each other,
Mm-hmm.
but Jason had kind of this thing that he would just retract into himself and become really moody, according to the other bandmates, which is a hilarious thing for like grunge rock stars to talk about.
And to complain about.
Right,
It's like,
exactly.
he's doing it. I don't know,
Yeah.
like, he's like method acting
Right,
over
exactly,
here.
exactly. You'd think that it would be like they'd be all
Well,
into
are you
it.
telling me Kurt was like, dude, you're fucking moody? Like, how moody was Johnny? If even
Right.
Kurt is like, dude, cheer up.
Yeah. Right, exactly.
Oh.
And so, yeah, Jason was kind of like a moody guy in the bus, and they didn't fire him, but they stopped the tour and they drove from New York back to Washington in silence.
You're going to say they went to Uziki. They're like, you can go home.
They drove to Uzinki, Washington.
Back to this teeny tiny town. You need to be isolated.
Yeah. So yeah, he got kicked out of Nirvana, basically. Soft kicked out of Nirvana.
Rough. For being moody.
For being moody. I also don't think he got any of the royalties for helping on the album that he paid to finish, which we don't have to go into.
Here's the thing, though. When you're in the indie music scene, you're not even thinking about it. You're not thinking this is going to become Nirvana. You're like, this is just my friends trying to play in open bars, you know?
Right,
like,
exactly. And all the things I've read, he's not super salty about it.
No. Oh, he's still around.
Oh, yeah. Jason Everman's still alive.
Oh, hell yeah. Oh, I've been calling him Johnny this whole time. Sweet Jesus.
It's okay. His name's Jason. So after you get kicked out of Nirvana, what do you think you do? What would you do?
Can I get 3 guesses?
Sure. Go ahead.
You get a job at a flower shop.
Okay. No.
Goes back to fishing.
Okay. No.
He gets married and has a daughter and like has a whole spiritual awakening.
Great guess. No. He joins as the bassist for Soundgarden, which is another amazing late 80s, early 90s band.
I love that you could tell I did not know who they were.
Soundgarden is an incredible band. Chris Cornell was the lead singer of Soundgarden. Sorry, Chris Cornell. I'm going to stop saying things that are embarrassing you.
That is he the guy who's like, you found me?
No, that's the Fray. Not at all Soundgarden. Soundgarden was another massive kind of, I don't even know if they're grunge band, more like, they're rock. They're kind of like 80s, 90s rock, but massive success. He was the bassist for Soundgarden.
Okay. So he's doing fine.
He was doing great, and he went on tour with them. But again, kind of ran into issues. Band members would call him moody. He would get really quiet and put his headphones on the tour bus and like not talk. He'd just get really inward, you know.
Here's the thing: that the way that it's being described, it sounds like so not a big deal.
Yeah.
Like I've heard worse stories about actors being on set and like pulling pranks on their co-stars.
Right,
and,
exactly.
And like harassing producers on set.
Mm-hmm.
Like this guy just putting his headphones on and like going into his own soul.
Right.
What is the problem here?
I know. And
Justice
that's the thing.
for Jason.
You'd think with justice for Jason, absolutely. And you'd think like as a musician that's the thing, you know. But from what I was reading, it kind of reminded me of you. It's like he had this intense yearning for life, something outside of whatever it is he was doing in that moment, you know. So he got kicked out of Soundgarden too, which again was a wildly massive band, huge success, and he didn't get a single piece of that.
Well, how big are they really? I've never heard of them. I listen to music all day, every day.
You do. So after you get kicked out of 2 of the largest American bands of the time, what do you do then?
At this point, I'm becoming a domestic terrorist and blowing up every guitar center in my local area.
So not quite. He enlisted in the U.S. Army.
Hell yes. Dude, wait, I almost did that.
You did.
I remember when I graduated from art school and I was so fundamentally disappointed in my whole experience with college, with New York, with the theater scene, that I went to the Air Force recruitment office in Brooklyn, New York. And I said, you get me to the most dangerous place in the world right now. And they were like, how about we teach you Russian and you work safely from New Mexico? And I said,
Right.
No. I want to be jumping out of helicopters.
Right.
You put me on those front lines.
Exactly.
We're like, you're not stable. But okay.
So
he enlisted in the U.S. Army.
he enlisted in the U.S. Army.
Okay.
Now, it was September 1994 when he left music and joined the U.S. Army and served with the Army Rangers. So he wasn't just Army, he was the Rangers. Part of the Rangers.
This guy goes hardcore. Whatever he's doing, he's like, I'm going to do it with my full ass to the wind.
Right. So during basic training, it's when all the stuff with Kurt Cobain went down. And
Meaning he killed himself?
Yes, which I don't know if we can say that. I'm going to have to probably beep you so we don't get demonetized. But it's fine. But yes, Kurt Cobain did the Kurt Cobain thing.
We can't say that either. That feels so soft.
It does feel very soft.
Kurt Cobain left the planet.
Right.
He ascended.
Passed away.
He left.
So Kurt Cobain did take his own life.
Yep. There we go.
Yeah. And obviously that made the news. And it was in the middle of Jason Everman going to basic training. And
oh my God, dude.
One of his drill instructors allegedly saw a picture of Jason on stage with Kurt Cobain and went over to him and said, "Is this you?" Can you imagine the terror that those drill sergeants had on him after they learned that he used to be in Nirvana?
He used to be in a band.
He used to be in a band.
Regardless, like how successful, how incredibly talented you are,
right.
You were in a band.
Drop and give me 50, Rockstar.
Yeah. Oh my God. I'm moving back to Alaska.
Well,
all roads
and
lead
again,
back to Alaska.
I'll show you a
for me.
picture, but we're talking, dude had hair down to his nipples that was curly, had the whole kind of grungy glam rock look, and he went to being an Army Ranger. So we're talking high, tight, 2 on the side.
This
right?
is the son I've always wanted. I'm so enamored with this man.
Yeah. So, and I found out about this because this is just an interesting little tidbit. I found out about that from a New York Times article written by a guy named Clay Tarver. I can't even read my own writing. A guy named Clay Tarver, who is also a musician from like the late 80s, early 90s scene.
Okay.
And he eventually became a co-showrunner of Silicon Valley, if you can believe it. And he's friends with Jason Everman.
Weirdly, that makes so much sense. Silicon Valley is such a good show.
It is a good show.
It is so funny.
I know. And ironically, I worked on that show. So I'm like,
did you actually?
I'm like 1 degree of separation away
God,
from
I
him.
don't know anything about you.
Yes, you do.
That I can't even explain how that makes sense. There's just like a musician's flair to that show.
A little
I
bit,
think
right?
There's something edgy about it.
There is. So,
So it's 94.
So it's 1994, and he's going through basic. He deploys in Latin America, and there's not much known about the work he did down there. It's kind of like Rangers doing Ranger stuff. You know what I mean?
No.
It was during like the war on drugs in the 90s. So they were down there kind of probably fighting cartel guys, if I had to guess.
Goddamn. Okay.
Or like in, Colombia doing
His
that whole
music
thing.
is going to get way more intense when he
Right.
comes back.
Well, and it is important to mention, like Soundgarden was a band that did a lot of music. Like I think Chris Cornell was very like anti-war, and Kurt Cobain was very like anti-establishment. So there might be a reason.
This is why he joined the army.
Well, and it's probably why they didn't get along very well, right? Because like this was resting inside Jason Everman the whole time.
Yeah.
So anyway, he worked in Latin America and on some covert operations. Worked in Afghanistan and Iraq. It leads to him joining the special forces, and he becomes a Green Beret. And he was allegedly pretty good at what he did. Like
This guy hasn't been bad at anything yet.
right. Well, get a load of this. So some of the other special forces guys that he worked with would talk about how he would get moody and get quiet on missions.
I'm so over people complaining about this shit.
Listen. So he would say he would get moody and he would get quiet, but it didn't interfere with his work, so we don't care.
Okay. What have we been talking about?
Right.
Kurt, eat dirt.
He would just keep pushing. That's kind of what they said. And so all the guys who he worked with in the special forces loved him.
He found his people.
He found his people.
Dude.
And he kind of had that inward quietness, but he would put his head down and work. And that's why people loved him.
Dude, I'm reading a book right now about, it's more about 9/11, but they also talk about the war on terror and how like special forces guys really came to like the forefront at this time because America was looking for a hero.
Of course.
And it's so easy to look at these men.
It's very easy to turn special forces into heroes.
Yeah. And like there's such a stark difference. Like journalists wrote about this, their article after article about how they're visiting base and they're talking to like anybody who is willing to talk to a journalist.
Right.
And they're like, we're talking to some private who like just arrived, like he just got out of base, like he's telling us everything. And then you just feel like this magnetic pull from the back of the room, and you turn, and the special forces guys have just arrived back.
Right. They've got like
camp.
sleeves, the full sleeves, the beard.
They all have the glasses
the
on, and
glasses.
like there's a dark intensity.
Yeah.
And they don't
all
talk
look like
to
Jocko
anybody
Willink.
else.
Yeah.
And they're all 300 pounds of sheer muscle.
Right. They can chew concrete.
And they do not want to talk to you.
No.
It's so interesting. It's so interesting.
Yeah. So he went from, being this kind of guy living in a small fishing village off the coast of Alaska to working on a fishing boat in Alaska during the summers, living in Aberdeen, becoming a musician, touring with 2 of the largest grunge bands in the world at that time, leaving, joining the army, and then joining the special forces and doing multiple tours in Afghanistan.
Dude, I'm obsessed with this man.
Well, get ready. So then
so sick.
he left the military in 2006.
Okay.
And he used his GI Bill to go to Columbia University. He applied like as a joke. He's like, there's no way I'm getting in. And,
obviously you're getting in.
And he got in
bud.
and he's like, it feels like somebody is just playing an extended prank on me. I can't even believe it.
What did he want to study?
He got a degree in philosophy.
Oh my God. Fucking way. Is this man a stoic?
I know, right?
Are you going to tell me he studied Aristotle right now?
No, so he got a degree in philosophy in 2006. And in 2017, he got a master's in military history from Norwich University.
Okay.
So this man is like truly like artist, warrior, poet, philosopher.
He's what Schwarzenegger never could be.
Exactly. We'll go into it, but nowadays he is in another band. So he's retired. He's got all his education. He like lives on the Puget Sound, and he's in a band called Silence and Light, which is a band based out of North Carolina that's made up entirely of retired Special Forces operators. So it's 5 members. I think one of them's like a Delta Force guy, and it's a metal band, or I think it's a rock band. All these guys are ex Special Forces, and they donate a portion of all of their album sales to helping first responders and veterans.
Please let me come to that cookout.
I know, right? That's got to be the most fun cookout.
Get me one invitation to that cookout. Wait, so he lives in the Puget Sound, but the band is based in North Carolina.
I think
he just
so,
travels back and forth.
I'm pretty sure. And he might, maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. When I was reading the articles about him, his friend had visited him when he was living on the Puget Sound in this like remote cabin. You know what I mean? Part of like what inspired his life, he claims, part of like the philosophy that he strives for, was a guy named Benvenuto Cellini.
Mm-hmm.
Who
sounds like a dictator, but I'm assuming is not.
He's not a dictator. No, he was a 16th century goldsmith, soldier, and writer, I believe from Italy, from Florence.
Mm-hmm.
And he was somebody who talked about this idea of every man should be a warrior, an artist, and a philosopher, because we're meant to be multifaceted people, right? And Benvenuto Cellini, I'll just call him Cellini. Cellini also lived a very fascinating life. I'm going to go through kind of the bullet points because we'll get bogged down in it very quickly. He worked for multiple popes as an artist, made a couple of them mad at him. He allegedly killed multiple people, such as rival goldsmiths, the person who murdered his brother, and Charles III, who was a duke at the time, and the killing of him led to the sacking of Rome in 1527. And this guy claims to have shot him with a crossbow and killed him. So if it's true, he's allegedly responsible for the sacking of Rome. He's
Italian.
And he's Italian.
Oh.
He was imprisoned for stealing gemstones from the Pope, and he survived multiple assassination attempts. And he wrote his own autobiography, which has been described as one of the most important documents from the 16th century, as it gives accounts of the life at the time, look into the arts, the politics, and society.
I can't figure out if I'm rooting for this guy or if I'm terrified.
Well, he's got, I mean, like all people of this era, a lot of problems, kept some young boys in his employ. I don't know what it is about people at that time that just couldn't help it.
About that time? How about our time? What is it with the children?
I don't know.
Can they just go to the movies?
Right.
Can you go home?
Thankfully, Jason Everman never engaged in that kind of thing. He kind of stopped at the warrior, philosopher, poet kind of thing.
He was like, truly, I will cherry pick.
I'm going to cherry pick some
I will cherry pick
philosophy
my
here.
life.
But yeah, and so I think it's really fascinating. And I want to tie this all back to Robert the Bruce, the King of the Scots, the ultimate rebel in the face of, extreme kind of English rule, right? And Aberdeen, Scotland. And, to me, it kind of comes full circle because across time, these are men who wanted something more out of life, right? And who really tried to strive and do something beyond what they viewed their station as, Robert the Bruce was like kind of a bit of a noble, but being a Scottish noble doesn't mean anything,
no.
right?
You're a farmer.
Right. Cellini was the same.
F.
Cellini was the same way. He was he worked from a young age as an apprentice, right?
There's also a theme here of these very talented and interesting men who lead fascinating lives of their own right, kind of existing at the feet of more famous men or more noble men.
Right, exactly. That's a really good point. Yeah, because Cellini has these popes and all these other artists that are around him.
Right, you're in the Pope's shadow.
Right.
Good luck.
Robert the Bruce was the King of Scots, but we know, we know the, I forgot his name again, Highlander.
William Wallace.
Well, we know William Wallace because of the movie, right?
Yeah.
To me, these are all men who, to quote Dead Poet Society, who's really quoting somebody else, they wanted to suck out the marrow of life. They really just wanted to live it to the fullest, right? I find Jason Everman fascinating. Jason Everman was a fisherman, a musician, a warrior, a Green Beret, a special forces operator, a philosopher, an educated guy. It's somebody who you look at and go, that is humanity. That's what a human is capable of. Right.
I am halfway of the belief that everything always goes back to ancient Greece.
Mm.
Like halfway because I could probably be talked out of it.
Mm.
But I think here it's pretty applicable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, Aristotle talked about, in terms of his relationship to Stoicism, of your body and your mind are going to mirror each other. So your mind can only be as strong as your body.
Right.
So like him going from special forces, Green Beret, to philosophy is actually not that wild
It's not.
to me.
No, it's not.
And like your body is as strong as it could possibly be. You've sucked the marrow out of that.
Right.
So the only thing that's left to suck the marrow out of is your mind.
Yeah. So anyway, that's my rabbit hole.
I
For
loved
the-
that
for this
rabbit
week.
hole.
Thank
What a
you.
beautiful, cozy little rabbit hole that was.
I thought it was really fun. So
Such
yeah,
a fan of this guy.
shout out to Jason Everman. He's still around, and shout out to Silence and Light. They seem like a great band.
Yeah, we should listen to their album.
I would love to listen to their album, and I mean, I back anybody who like supports veterans and first responders.
Same.
I think it's so dope. Like,
who
and the fact
could
that they're
be against that?
the fact
you
that
know?
they're a band made up of old, like ex special forces guys.
You're about to say old.
Well, they are old guys. They'd probably call themselves old.
They
but-
could throat punch you from here. if you
They
were
could
really
kill me
careful
with their
what you would
paintings.
say.
So yeah, that's my rabbit hole. Jason Everman, connecting to I started in Aberdeen and I ended up in Jason Everman. So I thought this was pretty interesting. I hope you found it interesting as well.
That was very fascinating.
Good.
That was very good. I'm Lindsay,
And I'm Connor.
and I told you this would be interesting.
And we'll be back next week with a different rabbit hole of Lindsay's design.
My rabbit hole.
All right, bye.
I'll see you in 2 minutes.